those who are joining us today. I'm Maulik, founder and CEO of Notchup. Today, we have an interesting guest whom I know from some early validations of Notchup. I happened to connect with him. We spoke about his startup and what I'm trying to build. I had some amazing feedback from the guest I'm going to introduce in a second. And more recently, he has gone on to do his second startup, second or third. I think it's probably third, if I'm not wrong. And has got tremendous many years of experience of building and leading engineering functions across multiple startups and scale-ups. And without wasting too much time, let me introduce Matthew Watts. Founder of Matrixia, if I pronounce that right.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah,
Matrixia. Thanks, Maulik.
yeah.
It's a pleasure. And yeah, we can get straight into it as soon as you want.
Yes, cool. I think that's pretty good. Like Matthew, let's just start with your background and your introduction, right? For our audience, would be great to know your career journey so far until the founding of Matrixia.
Of course, Matrixia. It's good.
Yeah.
So previous to Matrixia, I was the chief technology officer as well as a co-founder of Lendflow, who is ultimately an SMB marketplace, one of the leading marketplaces in the United States. Prior to that, I was the early CTO of EasyVan. And prior to that, I've worked in other procurement level roles, building up to the problems that we solve here at Matrixia. Hopefully that kind of gives a good highlight.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Interestingly, I have also worked within the lending space a long time back. That's probably was one of my early, I wasn't the founder, but I was the first person on the ground. So I was employee number 1 or probably 0,
Mm-hmm.
I was there before the payroll was actually set up. We built this whole platform out about like a buy-to-let commercial mortgages here in the UK. And the business is doing pretty well. I hope they go IPO very soon so I can liquidate some of my holdings. I really hope so. Anyways, Matt, let's dig in today's topic, right? So today, like everybody else, everybody is getting more and more excited about AI agents and AI tools and all. And I think it's for the right reason. There's a lot of noise. There is a lot of false positives, right? But generally, AI, if you think about B2B SaaS startup, which was all about changing your CapEx to OpEx and, unlocking your P&L, right? Or P&L, overheads, reduce overheads, allow you to be more dynamic, more variable, right? That's what all that happened with B2B SaaS startup. But with AI wave that is happening right now, it's all about productivity gains. Right. AI generally, there are use cases where AI can do something different than what you would normally be doing. But majority of the tooling or the platforms are designed to basically either accelerate the manual work that you are already doing or improve the quality of the work that you are already doing. Right. It's not about just coming out with completely out of blue workflows or processes, right? In some cases, you still do that, right? But majority of the AI tools is about improving or accelerating the work that you are already doing, right? But as you understand, is all about productivity gains. But oftentimes that productivity gains is really difficult to measure. You don't really know whether these AI tools are actually adding any value to your operations or not, or they're just increasing your costs, or they're just making some of the workflows, maybe in some cases, a little bit more complicated, more overheads and all, right? So instead of improving productivity, they might be degrading the productivity. So that's the topic we're going to talk about. But with your, recent experiences, right? Let's start with understanding of, okay, what kind of tools have you recently used or are familiar with that I think could be relevant for businesses in general? But more like technology, sure. Like my background is technology, your background is technology. So within the, the CTO org, what are some of the developer productivity tools or something that are more relevant or more useful in your opinion?
I would say I categorize them into two things, right? There's something that we call a creator and a quality gate. And what these two different things help us do is hold the line before anything merges into a upper environment or outside of our development environment, so that those then can be surfaced later on, either through a dashboard or other tooling to hold us accountable. And so what are these creator and quality gates? Well, one of them is like Cursor, right? Which is an AI-assisted editor that helps us to create templates of the code that we're working on. It helps us do multi-file changes. safer refactors, but we also want to couple that with a automated quality gate, which can really help explain things very explicitly as to whether or not something should be moving up to the direction. So the main two tools when it comes down to tooling is you can choose what you want to use, whether it's GitHub Copilot, Cursor, Claude AI. There's so many services right now that are releasing. But I think ultimately, as long as you have that creator element and something that's holding it accountable at the end of the day before it moves, that's where the majority of your advances are going to come, because just like in every tech organization, it has to follow these processes. And so the faster, the smaller you can make those changes and the faster you can impact those changes, the more trust and productivity you'll have in production.
Okay, cool. Now you talked about this creator stuff, right? And generally,
Yep,
a lot of this generative AI category of AI tooling is about creating. You're generating something new.
that's right.
And suddenly, in my opinion, people are just suddenly getting excited about the generative capabilities. Hey, look, I give you this prompt and it generates the whole video for me, the whole audio for me, or even write code for me,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But apart from that, you also have plenty of other AI capabilities, like, for example, pattern detection or predictive analytics, right? Where you can identify a growing threats or,
Sure.
sorry, my throat is just a little bit coffee today. But, you can detect your vulnerabilities or attacks, viral attacks on your system and so on. Just at a very high level from the entire AI landscape, what segment are you most excited about?
For us, it's the AI in general through large language models. The generative AI component of things can be leveraged in multiple different areas using not only automations, but very clear definitions, contracts, if you like, of how a specific piece of functionality needs to perform. And those are the things in an engineering organization are what really moves the needle, is really slicing things down into ways that we can really define clear contracts for, so that we do all of those workloads with artificial intelligence to help on those areas, and leave the strict rollback criteria, hiring criteria to the actual senior engineers so they can contribute in that area. So it is all generative AI, yes, but we control how that generative AI works inside of our ecosystems, right? For
Yeah.
example, if you're doing a simple refactor of a function and you know what the output of that function should be, that's something simple AI can take. There's no reason for you to allocate a day or 2 days of a resource's time to do that when you know the contract, you know what the output of that function is. And so ultimately you can get AI to refactor it for you, run it. You can use systems like at Lemflow, we used an open source library called BAML. Very, very, very good at this contracting and component, which is basically, is this working in the desired way before it goes to production? And they use the language models for that. It's a very lightweight version of that contract. But yeah.
So switching our focus back to technology and
Yeah.
setting up your engineering and product and data teams and everything else, right? What do you think within the whole CTO stack? What's like segment or sections of the whole technology management, like writing code, maintaining code, adding and removing people, tooling and processing and all that thing. What do you think? Which segment is largely conquered by different kind of AI tools, right? And which segment you think is still like, the AI is still not there to do that? And I'll give you
Mm,
an example. For example, like credentialing, when you're hiring somebody, credentialing a user, like, checking for technical skills and all. I think AI can do a pretty decent job. But what AI not good at is basically understanding whether the person is genuine in his responses or not. It can
mhm.
flag a little bit, but not to a very good level. And right now, there's a whole AI versus AI going on in that space. So I think in one side, okay, AI is doing a good job, but on the other side, AI is not doing a good job.
Yeah.
That's just one example. But overall, within the whole engineering leadership or management stack, do you think what section is good? There's a good impact of AI.
That's actually a really easy answer. So for me, with the experience I have, it's trust. It's the one thing I wouldn't necessarily say it's the fault of the AI, but more implementation. Managers in engineering organizations need decisions that are predictable, explainable, and replayable at any time. And so those same inputs produce the same outcome. So without trust, AI stays as a sideshow where we'll use it for a few things. But with the trust component, it becomes the path to production where teams would only rely on it when they see the reasoning and they rerun it. And so ultimately having these contracts in place, like I was telling you previously with BAML and how those things work, means that the permissions are correct, personal data isn't leaked, operations are safe to retry, those kind of things. And the more small tasks you can scale, then you can get to the bigger tasks, but you're basically really getting the enterprise into a position where they can scale artificial intelligence in a way that's reliable.
Okay. So, talking with about AI again, oftentimes people are talking more about speed, the speed at
For
which you
sure.
can get things done. Generally, the quality of the work you produce could be better as well. Subjective, sometimes you can have AI hallucinating and producing incorrect results, right? And that ties up back to the trust that, okay, if you trust your AI to a level like certain threshold, but then in the beginning it might be
Mm-hmm.
overperforming, but over a period of time
Mm-hmm.
it may degrade, right? Or there might be, or sorry, false negative, where it kind of
Yep.
went under down and you didn't detected that, right? So the triangle is basically speed, quality, and trust, right? What trust kind of really drives the other two. What do you think is the one? I mean, I know the answer already, but what do you think? Which is the one thing that the leaders should really focus more on?
I think ultimately it's changing the conversation to refactor it to smaller batches
Mm,
instead of having a much larger batch. We've all been inside of these PR queues where somebody's changed 13,000 lines of code, right?
mm,
That's a nightmare for me to review. And it's the same thing for an AI, right?
mm,
It's just unrealistic expectation. Cutting it down into being much smaller work and work that has a contract bound to it means we can enable trust at scale in the org, and we can get those things done faster instead of having to hoarding through all these big, massive requests that are coming through. It's the same thing. So even if it's something as small as reviewing user logs, for example, which you have to do for compliance every quarter,
mm.
well, those kind of things are great for AI. But ultimately, you want to make sure that you're careful where that AI is hosted. Again, if it's a compliance thing, you want it to make sure that you have it locally hosted versus using OpenAI. But ultimately, that's how I would say, like, start small and use those automations in AI to solve that problem there for trust, then scale up.
Yeah. Right
Yep.
now, what kind of tooling are you using or planning to use for your company, right? Is it more about AI supported code generation? Would it be AI DevOps? I read about AI DevOps engineer. So instead of hiring a real DevOps, you just hire an AI DevOps. There is a platform where it allows you to like prioritize your user tickets or your product roadmap based on different signals and all. And there's so many different kind of tools. Like every single touch point, I think there is an AI tool for it. Can you name some of the tools that you are planning or already using in your organization?
I would say even you can just use hypotheticals. I wouldn't as an executive choose to completely automate a role of a business function. Instead, I would want to have a human that has the ultimate say, who is experienced, to work with AI. So have AI complement their job. Here's a scenario which is realistic and could happen. If AI makes an assumption and makes a mistake on production, your business is dead.
Mm,
It's good to have a human in front of it that can basically have these safeguards and guardrails to prevent that from happening. But ultimately, when we're running a business, using automation platforms like Zapier and N8N are the
mm,
first step to getting that completed, right? After that, then you can level AI on top of those frameworks to perform those tasks, irrespective of what they are. Are you scanning through your emails and triaging what emails you should be responding to? Like, we all know how long emails take us to do.
mm.
So that's a good first pass. Yes, there are services that do that. So ultimately, you could be leveraging that. From an engineering perspective, using Cursor, those creators, to really scaffold out what you're working on. So instead of starting at 0%, you're starting at 60%. I wouldn't trust Cursor to build out complex functions for me, especially mathematical functions. So that's something that a human has to do, but AI can help them get to that point. And then securing contracts around that process. So tooling really it differs from organization to organization, but I would say mostly think of that creator and think of that quality gate, because those two things, irrespective of what you use, will protect the business.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. What part of things, right? So, like, when it comes to engineering leadership, You have the technology side where you need to build a piece of technology, right, and support that. And then you have the other side, like, hiring people, nurturing your talent, upskilling them and all. Which side do you think AI can have better impact?
But I think both, to be honest. I
Mm,
think there is plenty of potential for AI to become a mentor for engineers to really help them understand maybe they're concentrating on a specific area of a class they've been working on and they've neglected another area. Really good for a mentorship perspective there, where they could be providing pointers on PRs as they're coming through to help them get better as an engineer to problem solve. And it's the same in the other direction. I think
mm.
ultimately, as long as there are guardrails in place for the AI, then it's great. Then it's a good thing.
Okay. Cool.
Yep.
On the people side, right? You touch about mentoring and all, right? Now, there's a little bit wider debate happening in the industry where particularly the beginners and the freshers, they're finding it's really difficult to get into the job market, and because they are competing against AI agents and all, right? And a lot of businesses, they're making decisions. Should we deploy an AI tool or should we hire a bunch of graduates, train them up and hopefully they will perform, right? Um,
Hmm.
and then just we are talking like, okay, AI being able to nurture and mentor this junior or talents coming through. Do you think there is a potential risk there where the new talent that is coming through, the new generation of engineers that will be coming through, they might become so dependent on this AI agent or AI coding tooling and whatever, right? That they are almost becoming slaves to that rather than the masters of the agents. Do you think?
There's always going to be that risk
Yeah.
because as soon as you're taking away critical thinking, which is what you're doing from the process, engineering 5 years ago was a very different field to what it is today,
Mm,
where the only resources you had was Stack Overflow and whatever you learnt in your degree.
mm,
And you were there to piece things together. Things have moved a lot faster now, and we are less concentrating on the bootstrapping, scaffolding of coding right now because AI is
mm,
really good at that. And there's
mm,
no reason for a human to be good at that because it's just the
mm,
same thing over and over again.
mm.
But the things where we really excel at is helping on the critical thinking side from a business perspective on how we can protect the user, how we can impact the user, and things that maybe AI is not as good at. But you can also make AI good at that as well with the right contracts. So it
Mm.
depends how far you go. But it's all ultimately about how fast you want to go to production, but also how safely. So I think
Okay.
yes and no.
Yeah.
It has the potential of being detrimentous, but I think at the same time, there's massive opportunity there for us.
What would be your tips for somebody new just graduating now and entering the job market? What would you recommend that person to, upskill or do things that will help him or her to be, post AI engineer?
So that's a really good question. I would say it's more of a mental model. For me, the people that I've seen be really successful in this field have been the people. Shreyas Doshi is a really good product manager that used to sit in as an advisor for us at Lamflow. And he said very clearly that it's people of high agency, the people that are going to be successful. Somebody that um, instead of not working on the problems directly, they find a solution to solve their problems, right? And so somebody that has that high agency, that's able to use a breadth of tools, not just stuck in one set, is that those people problem solvers in a completely different era now because of AI. We have just more resources available to us. They're the people that are going to be really successful, and the people that are stuck in a single programming language or a single interface are going to be the ones that have those issues. Is what I think. Facebook used to
Okay.
have this poster across the whole campus, which I loved, which is
Hmm.
nothing at Facebook is someone else's problem.
Yeah,
So
that's good.
they enforce the fix it. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's actually a very, very good statement, right? That
Hmm.
it's our problem, right? I actually, just that reminded me of something. Like I can't remember exactly, but there was an event I attended many years ago, and there was this guy, some product manager from Facebook, talking about something where he printed the whole profile of the person, like some real user, but they printed the whole profile, and the whole page was like connected on the page, and it was like 100, 200 meters long. And then he dragged that whole long strip of paper into the meeting and was talking about the problem. Hey, how would you really preserve this history for this person and so on? I can't exactly remember what it was, but that was like something crazy that I heard once. And I wondered, I really wondered like how, like Facebook and Apple are the ones who really groom these product managers, and Google, right? Those three,
That's right.
the product thinking, the user first thinking are these companies, right? Um, Anyways, I have an interesting question just on that. Hypothetically, right? Just imagine this scenario. So you have possibility of using AI agents, like Cursor or something else, which can you give the instruction and they'll write the code for you, end to end, right? Versus you have a real person who will do the job, but maybe a little bit slower, maybe needs a little bit more insights on getting the job done. But that person could be complemented with an AI personal agent or a personal assistant, which replicate the user's way of working and can produce similar output, or at least get the low level mundane tasks done on behalf of the person. So you as an employer, um, has a choice. Do you go with a generic agent, which will, regardless of the kind of employees you have, will always perform at the same level? Or would you go with an AI clone of your employee, which will perform differently depending on that person's background and the experiences?
It depends. I think if I was to rephrase your question to say if there was a contract behind everything it was doing and it was
Mm,
guaranteed, I would go for the AI because two reasons. The AI is not sleeping, so it's going to be doing this the whole time, and everything that the AI is responsible for is bound to a contract. And so as long as there's an explicit response to that, I would trust the AI probably a little bit more. But there's the part of the human component of things, which is understanding users more empathetically, and it depends on the role, right? It really does depend on the role, but it depends. My answer is yes, I would go for AI, but under specific situations, I wouldn't want AI doing that. What
yeah.
we're talking about, right?
But that on AI, would you trust a generic AI, or would you trust an AI which is most trained to a particular user or a particular engineer?
I would definitely say that the training, the
Mm,
context aware nature of
mm.
having something being trained on a specific task is infinitely more better. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, cool.
For
All right.
obvious reasons. And I mean, unless you go into artificial general intelligence, AGI, and
Mm,
then that's a very different scenario. But I think as things stand today, having a DeepSeek model trained on my corporate information inside of our repos is better than a generic non-trained repo.
yeah, yeah, totally. Right. Anyways, I think we are coming, like, we almost had an half an hour talking about this. And before we start wrapping up, I would love to know from you, given your YC background and all, are there any YC or non-YC companies, maybe probably at seed or Series A stage, that you're really, really excited about?
I've been busy building a lot. And so I tell you, there's one company that I'm super excited about is BAML, the people that I was talking to you about, which is
Mm,
the interpretation layer, the workflow layer between the language model and the programmatic layer. And so if you have a chance, go check them out. They're doing phenomenal work. And yeah, that's probably the number one area I'm super excited about right now. Who else? Who else at YC or in the industry? I think that's definitely the way I would go because really the communication between AI and programming interface is something that we need to solve for pretty quickly, and they're doing phenomenal work there. Yeah,
okay, cool. Wonderful. Anyways, Matt, I think that's really insightful from you, talking about just say the state of AI within technology and engineering practices, right? So I think, thanks a lot for your time today. I think I would love to wrap up this conversation, but I'm sure that we'll have a lot more conversations, ideally when I hope to see you in person, hopefully very soon as I come to SF
that's
in
right.
near future.
Yeah,
You're Seattle, right? If I'm not wrong.
I'm up in Seattle. That's right. But
Yeah.
I'm down in San Francisco quite frequently.
Okay, cool. That would be wonderful. I would love to see you in person, and have a coffee or a beer. I don't know what you prefer, but would love to do that, right?
Both
Both coffee and beer together.
at the
Wow.
same time. Yeah,
Yeah,
there you go.
hopefully,
It's
hopefully
been great.
soon. Yeah, thanks a lot, Matt. And to our audience, right? I think it's about time that we wrap up. If you want to listen to more of this kind of talks, then do follow our podcast on both on YouTube or Spotify, whichever you prefer. Or you can sign up to our newsletters. If you're a tech talent looking to upskill yourself, achieve your career goals, just sign up to northsouth.com as a talent. and achieve your career goals. We've got quite a few modules for you around that, getting the right job, getting hired in the right teams, understanding your background and your skills relevant to the company or the project you're working on. And if you're a CTO looking to automate your team ops for higher engineering productivity, then just reach out for us to have a demo with us. And that's it today for today, guys. Thanks a lot, Matt. Once again, really wonderful podcast today.